Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Rod Parsley, World Harvest Church in Columbus, Ohio. Allegations of spiritual church abuse. You don't want to miss this program. Stay tuned. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Von Hanshaw with the Word of Truth broadcast. I made a video the other day on Rod Parsley yelling and screaming, humiliating some of his employees out on the church lawn. And I made the comparison between Jim Jones, the cult leader in the 70s, and Rod Parsley. Very similar behavior toward the church members. Yelling, screaming, berating, humiliating. All of that goes into church abuse. In that same video, I said, I will not be shocked to find out if there are not more allegations of abuse and scandals that comes forth. Today, this is a lengthy video. We're going to expose Rod Parsley as a church abuser, the cult leader that he truly is. And I've been saying this about that man for over 20 years, and now the stories are beginning to come forth. Watch these videos by Megamaniacs podcast. I don't know the lady's name. I think her name is Robin. She was a human resources director there at World Harvest Church. So she knows these stories firsthand. Watch this, and all these videos are linked in the description. Watch these videos. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Hey guys, Robin here for episode 1, The Smoking Gun. I've been playing around with the teleprompter which this program offers, and after I'm going back and looking at it, I kind of like being able to just interact and kind of off the fly a little bit, but I'm also got to look down at my notes because I feel like when I'm reading that teleprompter, it just is not coming off the way that I want it to. But I'm not going to be able to remember all of this either. So here in episode 1, if you're following this, the experiences that I'm discussing specifically right now are the experiences that I myself had in the almost 4 years that I was the HR director for World Harvest Church, which also has 2 other kind of companies, if you will, under that umbrella: Valor Christian College and Harvest Preparatory School. So there may be episodes that are discussing other ones, and I want you to know that they are all owned and operated by World Harvest Church and the people that started World Harvest Church. Rod Parsley and his daughter didn't start it, but she is a part of not only the preachings but the problems. So in this episode called The Smoking Gun, we'll kind of get to why we're calling it that, but I wanted to start off and talk about what constitutes abuse when, especially abuse in the workplace, toxic work environments. How are those defined? What does the EEOC say about what defines an abusive and a toxic work environment? And then we'll kind of go from there into why the episode is called what it's called. So Symptoms of abusive and toxic workplaces are increases in absenteeism, which I think we definitely have experienced when I was at World Harvest. Employee turnover, the highest turnover that I've ever seen in my entire life, which is really weird for a church. In an environment where, things should be positive, things should be exciting, because we're, talking about God and openly praying with each other and encouraging each other, and just trying to overall be happy, positive people. But as we go through this, you will see how, unfortunately, that breakdown kind of continues to happen in the daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, abuses against people happen. Productivity declines, back to the symptoms of abuse in toxic work environments. And abusive workplaces contribute to anxiety, depression, and in severe cases can cause symptoms of PTSD. And I know from the messages that I've been receiving that many of you, I either know that these have happened either to yourself or people in your departments, or you think that there's something going on with you, or you're crazy because you have these feelings of post-traumatic stress, or there are things that are triggering you, or you're not getting enough rest, you can't sleep, you're anxious all the time, even when you're in prayer. And I think that, once we delve into this a little bit more, it may give you some insight why those things are happening, if you're not sure why they're happening already. So the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they define offensive conduct as, but not limited to, offensive jokes, slurs, name-calling, physical assaults or threats, intimidation, ridicule or mockery, insults or put-downs, offensive objects or pictures, and interference with work performance. What makes spiritual abuse possible? We enable spiritual abuse when we value charisma over character. We value the institution over the individuals. We value advancement over accountability. And when you are talking about kingdom advancement, or, assisting people in the church to God so that they can, be saved, we know that kingdom advancement is a good thing. But when we take it over accountability for our leaders, we set a timer for the leader to someday detonate the kingdom progress that they've helped build, which obviously is very unfortunate and can leave a lot of brokenness among the people that have been left along the way to deal with these things in the moment, and then have to kind of unpack those things later on, and deal with the repercussions and the symptoms of what the problem is, which is the environment and the things that people are subjected to on a pretty regular basis. I would say at least twice a week in service planning meetings, which usually happen on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then probably 3 times a week if you work the ministry schedule, because then you're dealing with the things on Sunday and then after service, of course. So back to what makes spiritual abuse possible. We value muscle over meekness. And I'm going to kind of delve in a little bit of what I mean by that. So there's 4 scriptures in particular related to this specifically. First one is 1 Timothy 3:3. Now the overseer is to be not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. The next scripture is 1 Peter 5:3. Be shepherds of God's flock, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Matthew 20:25 and 26. You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And lastly, 2 Timothy 2:24. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but must be kind to everyone, able to teach, not resentful. So I wanted to say all of that before I go into not only the first, but probably one of the most impactful examples and things that I will discuss. And I'm going to tell you why I feel that way. So the resignation letter, and again, I'm keeping everything anonymous, but the resignation letter that I'm going to read to you, it not only is very, very bothersome, but I received this resignation letter within my first 2 weeks of starting my job as the HR director at World Harvest Church, and I ended up staying there for almost 4 years. So when I got this resignation letter, I honestly was like, okay, God, what is going on? What have I gotten myself into? And what am I supposed to do? And so I spent time in prayer, obviously first. And I knew that I had a purpose at World Harvest, but I just wasn't sure exactly what it was going to be, except for I knew that the people that work there needed an advocate. They needed someone to be a support system for them. They needed someone to help them navigate the day-to-day and have someone that they could come and talk to, and maybe someone that could give advice to help them deal with everything that goes on and was going on at the time. So before also that I read the resignation letter, I also want to say that I wasn't involved in discussing the resignation with the people that resigned, but I was called in at the very end of the meeting that was had with the two people that resigned. It's a husband and wife, and I started to ask questions, and granted, I'm there a week and a half or 2 weeks at most. Okay. So I start asking questions like, what did you mean by this? And I was told that it was already taken care of and I didn't need to bother myself with it. And I just needed to put the resignation letter and the non-disclosure agreement in the file and leave it at that. So I really, that's what I did, but I just kept thinking, what is going on? So again, before I read this resignation letter, I want you to know that it is bothersome, very bothersome. But also I think it is unfortunately a perfect example of what people go through at World Harvest, especially when they are department heads or they're pastors and they're responsible not only for themselves, but they're responsible for other people. And some of you have sent me messages or even commented, publicly and said, well, I've heard plenty of people say things like this, but what are some real examples? Give me more. And to me, this is, again, not only how I started my position within the first couple of weeks. But I think it really paints a picture for you, again, of what's going on in meetings, what people are dealing with, and that not only is there dysfunction and there's abusive behavior, but people are getting yelled at and ridiculed, and their salaries thrown in their face, and their amount of work thrown in their face, and they can never do anything right, or they don't do anything. And why are we spending all this money for people that cannot do what they need to do? And I will assure you, because I was also bad-mouthed after I left there, and I expected it, but I want you to know that these are some of the hardest working people that I have ever seen in my entire life. They will not leave until the job is done. They sacrifice time with their families. They sacrifice their health. They sacrifice their mental health. They sacrifice their schoolwork. They sacrifice their time with their friends. I mean, the sacrifices go on and on and on and on. And all there is to thank these people for their sacrifices is that they do terrible work. They don't work at all. Why are we paying you? We can find other people that can do your job for less money. And so it's just really, really sad. So without further ado, the resignation letter. So this is addressed to Pastor Rod Parsley and Megan Hassett. Megan Hassett was my boss. She's almost everybody's boss. And she is considered the chief administrative officer unless her title has changed since I left. So please accept this letter as formal notification of our resignation from World Harvest Church, as well as resignation as an ordained minister with the City Harvest Network. My last day with the company will be sometime in March of 2019. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to work at World Harvest Church for the past 7 months. During this time, it has been an incredible honor to work for you and to be a part of touching the world through places like Pakistan and beyond. However, due to the below reasons, we have decided to no longer be employees of World Harvest Church. Example 1, the title is Unhealthy Work Environment. While WHC's vision and mission are to love God and love people, this has not been evident in the day-to-day operations of the organization. WHC staff are treated poorly, and if anyone questions anything or makes a simple mistake, they are verbally abused in a room full of people rather than sitting down with the employee to talk through what they did wrong and how they can meet the expectations of World Harvest Church. In addition, and on February 27th, after we shared our personal concerns on why certain people had left the ministry in a confidential conversation, we were used as a sermon illustration during a Wednesday night church service. While employees are expected to perform at a level of excellence, there is zero training provided and employees are left to figure it out on their own. After the employee makes a decision that is unsatisfactory to World Harvest Church, they are then disciplined for their actions even though they never received proper on-the-job training. I will tell you that unfortunately, I was privy to the information of no training. I think that certain department heads have tried to do their best to come up with training manuals, but even myself, day one, I did my own new hire paperwork. I was left to figure it out. And luckily, I don't get discouraged easily, but and I had people around me that were very helpful in helping me find things. Where do I need to go? And that sort of thing. But in other positions where there are specific things that need to be done, especially done what would be considered satisfactory, there needs to be some training. And unfortunately, it's just not offered. And it's kind of baptism by fire, if you will. So that's my 2 cents on that. So the second reason these people decided to leave, unsafe work conditions. And this is the more disturbing piece, if you will. On more than one occasion, a firearm has been pulled out in a staff meeting. On the first occasion, it has been set on a table, and on the second occasion, it was openly discharged on the ground, leaving fragments of the bullet flying across the room and almost causing bodily harm to those who were present. Following the incident, I was given a piece of the shrapnel and was told that it is now a part of my testimony. While this may be acceptable behavior for World Harvest Church, these kinds of situations present an unsafe work environment. I agree. And then lastly, the reason this couple decided to leave is they continued to request meetings with Pastor Rod Parsley, and as you'll see, this was what their experience was. So following our first resignation with WHC, I was personally called by Pastor Parsley and was asked to stay, and was told over 4 weeks ago that we would sit down and work through all of the above items. I agreed and shared that I will stay, but that it's important to sit down and work through everything that was discussed. Following this phone call, I've tried to set up a meeting with Pastor Parsley on multiple occasions. Each time I was told that the meeting was rescheduled or that they would have to let me know another time that would work. After the third request, I waited patiently for another 3 weeks for this to happen, which never took place. While this may have seemed of no importance to WHC, these above matters were very serious concerns for us both as employees. We are both sorry that we were not able to sit down with each other, as the scripture says in Matthew 18, in order to work out our differences. However, in spite of the lack of concern, we want you to know that we love, forgive, and appreciate the opportunity that was given to us at WHC. So, I hope that gives a little bit more insight of why there has been such outrage from staff members, that have left, from students that have left, or students of the college that have been given jobs and subsequently have left. That, again, these are the conditions that Christians and people that are trying to worship and bring people closer to God, that they have to deal with on a pretty consistent basis. And sometimes this is right before, things are happening right before they go out on stage to sing or preach, or go and meet with people. And I don't know if you can even fathom this, or if you've ever been in situations where you're getting hollered and screamed at constantly, or right before, you're going to complete some work. And it's very hard to not only keep your composure, but then get your composure back and be able to operate at a high level. And again, I was the HR director for almost 4 years, and I didn't hear any other situations like this specifically. I either witnessed or had people in my office very regularly crying, sobbing, needing encouragement because they had just been berated and demeaned for hours in front of their peers, and then were expected to go and operate in excellence. And it's nearly impossible. You can pray, you can ask God for strength, you can ask Him to sustain you, but and I think that He will. But I also think that it's very disheartening, and it starts making you question everything. And some of these people have given up their entire lives and come from other states and move their entire family to come and be a part of something that they think is changing the world and winning souls for heaven. And this is what they have to deal with. And so just think about that. Think about being in situations like this and then expected to go out and pretend like it's not happening, or that everyone's great and happy and positive, and behind closed doors there is a whole different picture being painted. There's a whole different behavior happening that many of you would not be privy to unless you were sitting in those rooms or you were in a position like mine. So I hope that this helps people that have been through things like this. I hope that it helps the people that are still there. I hope it helps the people that have left there and are still experiencing heartbreak over the things that happened to them. I hope that forgiveness can happen. And I hope that people know that this isn't normal. This isn't how workplaces, let alone churches, are supposed to run operations and treat people. And I'm thankful that the people that are still there do actually love God and love people, because I don't know what lifelines they have anymore as far as people right there that they can talk to and commiserate with. Or they just leave. And a lot of times that's not possible because either they feel like God hasn't released them yet from that position, or they need somewhere else to go because they have families and they need to support their families. Everyone, welcome to Megamaniacs podcast. This is episode 2 entitled Typical Tuesday. And before we get started, I want to give you a little history of and context of World Harvest Church. I think when I did the first episode, my assumption was that people that were going to be watching were either former staff members or former parishioners of World Harvest Church and would know what World Harvest Church is. But I have found out that there are people watching that may not have a very broad knowledge of what World Harvest Church is. And so I just want to give you a little bit of context before we get into the heart of the episode. So World Harvest Church was once a thriving mega church with thousands of parishioners. A church with a televised message, which I believe that they still are televised. And Rod Parsley's name was synonymous with names like Lester Summerall and Kenneth Copeland. And the church also gave way to World Harvest Bible College, which is now known as Valor Christian College, and also Harvest Preparatory School, which is a preschool through 12th grade private Christian school in Canal Winchester, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Today, World Harvest Church is a shadow of what it once was. Now, a small fraction of parishioners remain. They are encouraged to sit up front in an effort to provide an illusion of once was, which is an auditorium filled with people, standing room only, if you will. If you weren't getting to church, an hour to an hour and a half early, you were likely not going to get a seat. But what also remains is a culture of abuse, a culture that has taken the best of its faithful followers and has reduced them to sad and abused people that feel like their voices have never been heard and that they have never been heard. And I think I can speak from experience here that most of us that have worked, a 9-to-5 job or a corporate America job, Mondays are kind of, the most dreaded day of the week. After the weekend, you just don't want to go in on Monday. You're tired and you're not looking forward to the workload. But at World Harvest Church, the most dreaded day of the week is typically Tuesdays. So Tuesdays are service planning meeting days, along with Fridays is like a smaller recap. But Tuesday is pretty much an all-day meeting. It's going to be the department heads that are responsible for others, but also responsible for the church services on Sunday. So Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Starts with the dissection of the previous week's service and making preparations for the upcoming Sunday service. And unfortunately, it becomes a abuse-filled dressing down. A weekly tradition of people feeling abused, marginalized, and embarrassed. I have an audio clip that we're getting ready to play. And this is a typical Tuesday service planning meeting. But before we roll the audio clip, I just want to tell you that if you've been in abusive workplaces, if you've been in abusive relationships, if you are a former staff member of World Harvest Church and have been in these service planning meetings, this clip may be a little triggering for you. So I just want to warn you before we play it that this could trigger you. It's probably going to shock you a little bit as well.
Who called me? You didn't.
Right, I didn't call the meeting, but I was in the meeting. I'm sorry.
Here's not we.
Okay.
I know who called the meeting because I told them to.
Yes.
Because I knew you wouldn't. And you didn't.
But we're ready for baptism.
No, you're not.
I can. Well,
no, you're not.
Well, let me walk it through.
You're going to take me 10 minutes to prove to you you're not.
Okay, then. Whatever you say, sir.
Are you being smug with me?
No, I'm not. I'm saying whatever you
Don't.
say. I'm not being smug. No, I'm not.
Don't.
I'm not.
One more person grins at me, one more person smirks at me in this room, it will be the last one of you that does it. The money that is being spent in this room is obscene for what I'm getting. Obscene. I hired people to run entire sections of this place, not hold their hand through a baptism. Much less what I just went through. Are you ever going to learn not to backtalk me? Because it's been a year and you still haven't learned. You didn't call me, did you?
No, I did not.
Right. But you just said you did.
No, I said I was in the meeting.
No, that you said that the third time. No, because not everybody, constantly wants to argue with you.
I don't want to argue with you. I'm not here to argue with you.
I would hope not.
I'm not. 100% I'm not, sir. I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to get the job done and help you in this vision. That's why I'm here. I'm not doing anything, sir.
How much time did you spend on this Saturday?
One which part?
Any of it?
I don't know.
Did you spend an hour?
At least 2 or 3. I did spend on Saturday. And I spent hours on Sunday. I didn't leave here until Friday night at 8 p.m. Sunday I worked. Yesterday I worked. I'm not trying to, you asked me when I'm working on it. So.
Sunday at 8 p.m.?
No, Friday 8 p.m. On a Friday 8 p.m. Saturday I worked 2 hours.
Friday 8 p.m. So what?
No, I'm just asking you a question. I won't even talk.
Do you want rewarded?
No, I don't want any rewards. I don't want anything. I'm just here to do my work with you. That's it.
Pastor, no one spent the amount of time that what your email indicated we should spend. None of us.
Want me to read it again?
No, you don't have to, sir. I have it.
Everybody else got it?
Yes, sir.
Maybe he's the only one, for whatever reason, speaking up. Because I can go around the room and ask you how much time the rest of you spent on it. Would you like me to do that? Anyone? Anyone? When you start listing out hours, you're on the wrong side of the track.
I'm not listening. I'm not doing that, sir. That's not
You just
that's
did!
not what I was trying to do. Pastor, I'm not trying to do that.
He was attempting to answer your question of time spent. Again, this is just move on. Let's just move on.
I'm so weary with it. I can't live. I'm so weary with it.
I understand. You are where you are. You need to just try to get through tomorrow's.
Megan and Lori called a meeting on Sunday because I directed them to. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
I sat down and wrote this. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Why should I have to do that?
You should not have to do that.
Add up the salaries in this room.
Like you said, it's obscene.
Beyond obscene. So we're either going to perform to that level or we're going to do something else. All right. I'm ready to hear about baptism. Thank you.
Do you want to start with marketing or follow up or?
What I wanted to know is how many of these 18 people that this other so-called department here has made such a god-awful screwed up. How could you plan anything so stupid?
Seems like the Holy Spirit is right in the middle of that, doesn't it? Unfortunately, this wasn't a single outburst. This is the Tuesday service planning meetings. This is what you will likely find on the Friday recap service planning meetings. And for the unlucky few, this could also be Sundays after church. These meetings are planned down, but these events can occur at any time, leaving the staff feeling on edge that they could face the wrath of their pastor or his daughter. It's so sad that good and well-intentioned people who love the Lord are degraded. Aside from the degradation is the silence. The fear of being targeted is so strong when someone else is in the crosshairs that you don't dare say a word to focus the attention on yourself. This defense mechanism makes everyone feel alone, even in the confines of a crowded conference room. And I can speak from experience, unfortunately, that I know what it feels like to be yelled at, to be bullied, and to basically be cowering in a corner, begging for someone to stop yelling and screaming at you. And I know, you can get to the point where you are so beaten down and feeling so low that you're willing, unfortunately, to throw someone else under the bus or focus the attention on someone else, because you can't take any more of the abuse. And that's definitely a defense mechanism. But it also creates another culture in these rooms where not only are you being yelled at and degraded and berated by your pastor and his daughter at times, but now you're turning on your coworkers or brother or sister that's in this room because they've thrown you under the bus, and you don't like it. Of course, you don't understand it, possibly, but now there isn't a united front. Now you're divided, and I believe that it's even easier to control people when there's division and there is no unity. So this behavior is just a breeding ground of just pure negativity and almost hatefulness. And I know, from talking to people that have been in these rooms, they're coming to my office to ask for advice, to just unpack what happened to them, to cry, to ask for prayer, and really seeking out why do we tolerate it? Why is it happening? Why do people that say that they love God and love people feel like they need to behave this way? And when I would hear those things, and even now, thinking about these situations and these meetings, and hearing the audio, I always go back to the Bible verse that talks about the fruits of the Spirit and how you will know people because you will know them by their fruit. And so wanted to read that passage specifically, and then I have another verse that I want to discuss as well. So this verse specifically about fruits of the Spirit is Galatians 5:22 and 23. And it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things, there is no law. And again, I'm speaking, to the people that have been in these situations, and unfortunately been in them at World Harvest, because there's just so many people that are hurt and they're broken, but they're also silenced with non-disclosure agreements. So the non-disclosure agreements that mostly everyone that leaves there are forced to sign is covering up a lot of these things that are happening behind closed doors. And I know it's very shocking to a lot of you, but some of you are like, yeah, this is what I signed up for. So I'm not, going to complain about what happened to me, because I put myself in that situation, and then I was not able to get myself out of that situation until I left. And that leads me to kind of discuss something that I wasn't completely aware of until I worked at World Harvest Church, because I grew up in the Nazarene church. So it's a little bit different than Pentecostal. But in the Pentecostal faith, if someone, especially a leader, is considered to be anointed, that you are just not to speak out against someone that is anointed. You're not to speak up to someone that is anointed, because if you do, it's like speaking against God. And so you have, this internal pulling of both ways of, I don't like to be treated this way. I don't like to see my friends or my spouse or whatever the case is to be treated this way. But also, what am I supposed to do? Do I risk, speaking out, and then potentially upsetting God and upsetting my pastor? Do I risk speaking up and then the attention is now on me, and now I'm being yelled at and degraded in front of my peers? And so the internal battle, I believe, is just palpable in these situations and then after the fact, because it's just very hard to read verses like fruits of the Spirit and then look at someone that you love and respect and not see any of those attributes being presented, unless it's in front of a crowd, and then you feel like it's fake, that behind closed doors you're one way, and then in front of people you're something else. And I think that's an important topic, if you will, to kind of focus on just for a second, because I've heard plenty of people say, well, it's not the head leaders of the church. It's the people that they surround themselves with. Those are the people that I have an issue with, or that have the issue. It's not necessarily the pastor or the leaders. And I can tell you in this situation, and anytime you're talking about the culture of an organization, is that the culture is driven from the very top. So if you go into an organization and you see chaos and you see dysfunction, you need not to just look in that area. You need to go and look up, because that kind of behavior would not be tolerated in an organization that had clear and concise rules and regulations on how we treat people, how we treat each other, and what we expect from our leaders to mentor people. And if there is a situation where somebody needs to be reprimanded, or you need to have a conversation with someone's work performance, that there's a way of doing that in a loving way, but it's still very effective. And I've had to do that. So, I've had people in my office to say, hey, I need you to improve in these areas. And although you're doing a great job, here, here, and here, this is an area that we would like to see some improvement. And let's focus on what the solution is. Let's not focus necessarily on the problem, but what's the solution? Do you have the tools that you need to be successful? Do you have the people that you need to be successful? And if not, how do we help solve that, so that we don't find ourselves in the same situation again? And from experience, I know that whether you carry out your tasks at World Harvest Church to a T, unfortunately, you will likely still find yourself in situations where you are being yelled and screamed at, and likely it's going to also be in front of your peers that feel like they cannot do anything to stand up for you. So I also am going to read another couple verses, but I also want to just briefly talk about the situations that these people are in these meetings. If you think about, these are grown adults that are college educated in most situations, and they are finding themselves in these positions where they can't even speak up for themselves. And if they do, they're going to, verbally get annihilated. Okay. But imagine 18, 19, 20-year-olds in these situations. And I say that because Valor Christian College, the students that come to go to school there, a lot of them have the opportunity to work in a work study program. And in the work study program, they're doing work at the church, and they're able to pay off some of their college debt and then earn a very meager paycheck on top of that, which that's a whole nother episode that we'll kind of dive into that. But to focus on, these young kids that come to be discipled, they come and they are on fire for the Lord, and then they find themselves in positions where either department heads are speaking to them the way that they're being spoken to, or leadership directly is speaking to these young people in the same way that you heard on the audio tape. And it's very concerning because these are young, impressionable people that may not have a lot to compare this to. And a lot of times it not only leaves them feeling very sad and broken and confused, but there then is the self-blame that comes into being in these situations where you feel like you can't ever do anything right. And if I'm, being yelled at and judged and bullied by these people, how is God perceiving me? How am I perceiving myself? How are others perceiving me? And can send you kind of into a tailspin, and you're not understanding even what's happening because it's so shocking. And I think for me, that's what I go back to as the shock factor of it being okay for people to be spoken to in this way. So I want to read another couple of verses before we kind of unpack that and then finish up the episode. So this is Luke 6, 43 through 45. Beware of false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. And what a sad place to be. I hope none of us find ourselves in that position where we are on Judgment Day, and God says to us that He has never known us. So I want to be clear about a few things. The first thing that I just want to touch on is that this podcast was created and is continuing to be developed to help people specifically that have found themselves in religious, spiritual, church situations where they are putting a lot of their faith in human beings, and they continue to find themselves disappointed, abused, feeling alone, feeling sad, feeling like they don't know if they want to be a Christian. They don't know if they want to continue to go to church. They don't know if they want to work in a church environment because of how badly they are being treated. I know this is probably going to help others as well, but the amount of people that have reached out to me to tell me their stories or tell me how working at World Harvest Church or being a volunteer at World Harvest Church or being a parishioner at World Harvest Church, how it affected them so negatively that they are still trying to find ways of making it make sense to them. And because they can't move past it, it manifests itself in different ways inside of them. And I don't want people to harbor all this negativity. I don't want people harboring, bitterness and unforgiveness, because it hurts us. Us being mad or bitter and angry towards other people, it's not hurting that person, it's hurting you. And a lot of times, because it manifests itself in a lot of different ways, you may be trying to treat the symptoms of that because you can't really treat like the core issue of what's going on, because maybe you don't even realize that it exists. And so I want to just be clear that this is not a mudslinging contest. This is not character assassination of World Harvest Church and Pastor Parsley and his daughter and some of the leadership. But I will also say, if the truth makes you look bad, that's also not my fault. And it's also not the fault of other people that the truth makes you look bad or paints a negative picture of you or puts you in a negative light. The goal here is that we help people that have been through these things so they can move forward. We help give a voice to the people that have been silenced with non-disclosure agreements. Non-disclosure agreements at World Harvest, they flow like milk and honey, and they use them to silence people and to cover up the behavior that you heard about in episode 1, and now you're hearing about in this episode as well. And it is not fair that people cannot talk about their experience because they were basically forced to sign a document so that they could get their severance pay until they could find another job. And what's the deal with having so many non-disclosures in a church anyways? Why are we so scared to allow people to speak about their experiences? I was lucky enough to not even be presented with a non-disclosure agreement, but I wouldn't have signed it anyways, because I I don't want to be in a situation where I can't tell my truth. I can't speak about my experience. And so I say that to say, I hope that this helps a lot of people, not just the people that have been at World Harvest, but maybe in other situations where has happened to them. And I want to say that, not only did I experience this behavior for almost 4 years, whether it happened to me or it was happening to the people that I worked with, but I have the personal experience of it as well. And I have some education experience behind it as well. And I am not an expert in this field, but I think the knowledge that I have because of the positions that I've been in can shed a lot of light for other people that are either not sure how to unpack some of this, or they have been silenced because they knew too much and they needed a severance package before they were able to find another position. And so they signed paperwork, they signed a non-disclosure that never expires. And so unless they get a subpoena, they're not going to be able to speak about their experience unless they decide to go against their non-disclosure.
Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying today's program. If it's a blessing to you, I would encourage you to like the video, to comment on it, and most importantly, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, share these videos. We want to get the message of the true truth of the true gospel out there. And the more you like my videos and comment on them and subscribe, then that helps the algorithm. Again, I pray that today's show has been a blessing to you, and we're going to get right back into it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let's get back into today's program.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of Megamaniacs, entitled Let Us Pray, P-R-E-Y. And in this episode, we are going to discuss particularly the work study program at World Harvest Church. Some of the situations also could include some staff members, but for the most part, I'm focusing on the work study program specifically because I pray very intently before I decide what the episodes are going to be about. And I really thought that this week was going to be a continuance of last week's episode. But the Lord really just laid it on my heart that I needed to talk about the work study program and what these kids go through, some of my experiences with it as well, and why I've had such an issue with it, and it still bothers me today, because I know a lot of these kids are still hurting, and they still find themselves being manipulated by the behavior that they experience there, and it's just very unfortunate. So I was looking for, a phrase that kind of encompassed what, how I viewed this work study program, and the phrase that I came up with was contemporary indentured servitude, which is debt bondage, also known as bonded labor, where people work for low or no wages in repayment of a debt. So these work study students come to Valor Christian College, and they get the opportunity, and I say that very lightly, an opportunity to work in a work study program, and a portion of their check is used to pay off their debt for college. So hopefully when they graduate, they have little to no debt. And I think that's a great thing. But regardless of the position, all of the students are paid $10 an hour. And 60 to 80% of their paycheck is gone back into paying their debt. And so they are essentially making $2 to $4 an hour for whatever job that they're doing. And I assure you, most of the jobs are real jobs. They are working very hard. And some of them are more like servant and or personal assistant type work, if you will, rather than manual labor. But anywhere from, working in the custodial or facilities department to working directly with the Parsleys. So these kids come, they get accepted into working in this program, and then they find out, where they're going to be working. And I will say that most of the kids, if not all of the kids, and probably most of the staff as well, everyone really has servants' hearts. They are excited to help. They want to help wherever, help is needed. They don't, ask a ton of questions. Although, I would like to think that we would try to use their gifts in the best way possible. But that they're getting an opportunity to maybe use some of the things that they're learning in college, or being mentored and being poured into by some of the people that they've been looking up to for years. And so some of these, kids find out that they've been accepted to work directly for the Parsleys. And I think they're probably excited, in the beginning, but they quickly find out that what was supposed to be an exciting time in their life has really turned into errand running and doing personal things for the Parsleys directly up until, late in the evening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then also talk about a few experiences that, again, still bother me today. And frankly, just absolutely wrong to treat anybody this way and not have accountability for some. So some of the kids are put on an on-call list. And this on-call list is a list of kids that have been approved to, again, work directly for the Parsleys. And by work, I mean they could be doing anything from washing and gassing up and detailing their vehicles to folding their laundry and putting it away, unloading their groceries, going and getting, Papa John's or McDonald's at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. So it's that kind of thing, it's errand running. And the kids, are required to, when they're on this on-call list, that they must be within 5 miles of the church during their time frame. And unless they get a phone call, though, okay, so unless they're called to actually go and do one of these errands or what have you, they are not to clock in. So they have to be available. They have to be within 5 miles of the church. But if they're, lucky enough not to get a phone call, then they are not paid for any of that time. And in the real world, this wouldn't be a thing. So if you're on call, yes, you might not necessarily be paid for the time that you're on call. Some places do and some places don't. However, if you get called out to something, you're always paid for a minimum time frame. So you get called and the job takes you 30 minutes, you're paid for 2 hours or whatever the minimum amount of time is. And so this is one of the areas of the work study program that, again, these kids feel privileged to be accepted into it, but quickly find out that not only are, they're really serving the leadership, but they're also treated badly during the process, and they're rebuked if they don't do something right, or if McDonald's doesn't get the order correct, they're yelled at for not double checking before they leave the drive-thru or leave the store. If something's wrong with the pizza, the same thing happens. They're the ones that are feeling the wrath, not the actual place that is making the food or messing up the food. And one of the situations in particular, in this situation that was upsetting to me is that, these kids are made to feel like not only made to feel like they're told, like you have a certain time frame that you're expected to go and do these errands and get it back to me. And in one situation, someone was pulled over for speeding. I don't know if you know where Bryce, Ohio is, but it's a speed trap. It's 25 miles an hour. And this is one of the ways that you would go through when you're near the church. And so the person was pulled over for speeding and made to pay the speeding ticket. They're on their own, even though they were running errands for the Parsleys. They were required because they were told that, they're not supposed to be breaking laws when they're doing things for leadership. But we also know that behind the scenes that they are getting screamed at if it takes too long for them to get back or if things are not done correctly. And so, these kids are caught between a rock and a hard place, unfortunately, and some of the staff too, because nothing's good enough. Everything's their fault. And there's just nothing they can do about it, unfortunately. And so, and there's really no one for them to talk to, by the way. So, they can't really go and talk to, any other leadership because they know it's going to get back, to the Parsleys or the people surrounding the Parsleys. And they're not able, a lot of times even to talk to the people they consider their friends because, these students are encouraged, if somebody is talking negatively or what could be perceived as negative talk, they're encouraged to tell on them. So, these kids may think sometimes that they are confiding in one of their friends and find out that, in fact, this friend has gone and ratted them out because they were talking ill of the ministry or the leadership. And so it's just very disheartening, like many of the other things that you've heard in the other episodes. So for me specifically, other than these things, a few of the situations that I was put in that that really bothered me, not only at the time, but they bother me today too, are students that I was told directly by leadership to either write them up for or get counseling for them. And so I was delving into that a little bit deeper and asking questions like any, good HR professional would. How do you know that they were engaging in this behavior? How do you know that, it's not just word of mouth? And what I was told is that they knew that it was happening because these students were engaging in what the ministry calls immoral behavior. And I'm going to define that for you, or I'm going to tell you how they define that in just a second. But they were engaging in this immoral behavior with the first daughter. And so then I'm asking, well, how is she being disciplined? And they're just looking at me, like a deer in headlights, well, that's not happening. Okay. So you have these kids that are engaging in what the ministry defines as immoral behavior, and they are to be penalized. They are to have repercussions. But the person that is their leader and their teacher and even their pastor, because she's up on stage, she's up in the pulpit, she is not being disciplined for the behavior. So directly from the World Harvest Church lifestyle statement and declaration of moral integrity, which is something that all staff members and work study students sign prior to starting work. So they define this immoral conduct, including but not limited to critical or negative attitudes, the public consumption of alcohol, drunkenness at any time, discussion of personal alcoholic consumption with students, use of illegal substances or discussions of personal use with students, promiscuity, homosexual behavior, or any other violation of the unique roles of male and female, or the biblical belief that marriage is limited to a covenant relationship between a man and a woman, premarital sex, cohabitation, extramarital sex, sexual harassment, use of or viewing of pornographic material or websites, or sexual abuse or improprieties towards minors as defined by Scripture and or federal or state laws. Any and all such activities are considered to be unfavorable and or undesirable behavior for a Christian role model and are not to be practiced or engaged in by an employee of World Harvest Church at any time. So you can imagine, what these kids are feeling when they find themselves in a position where they're getting this extra time with people that they idolize, that they've been watching on TV, and they feel like it's such a privilege to not only be there and maybe be working directly for them, but now they're getting this extra time with these people. And they engage in such behavior for whatever reason. It's peer pressure. Maybe they were engaging in the behavior before they got there. Maybe they were afraid to say anything. The list goes on, but they engage in this behavior. And then when the first daughter gets mad at them, or they don't do something right, now all of a sudden they're being penalized for behavior that they were doing with her. It's just so crazy. And as I'm saying it, I'm getting stirred up because I try to always keep the right spirit about what I'm doing and what I'm saying. But it literally breaks my heart for these kids and these staff members that have to go through this behavior. And then I know for a fact that they are leaving and they're more broken than they showed up, or they are excited when they get there and think that this is the best thing that's ever happened to them. And then they leave and they are broken and they don't want to go to church anymore. They don't know who they can trust because the people they thought that they could trust has turned on them. And they're angry at God, and they are not sure even if they want to be Christians anymore. And they're full of anger, and they're full of anxiety and depression. And this is all happening at church, you guys. I mean, it's, and I'm sorry for getting emotional, but I know these people, and they're good people, and they do not deserve, nobody deserves to be treated this way, period. But especially at a Christian organization. Now, what I will say is that there are many good professors and administration at the college, and the same is true for the school, Harvest Preparatory School. There are many great teachers and many great administrators there. But they, at the end of the day, and please be grateful that they are there, okay? But at the end of the day, even they cannot protect your kids or protect you if you've been a staff member there. They cannot protect you from going through these things because, again, it starts at the head. It starts at the very top leadership, and they're the ones that are calling the shots, even though we are never to say that the Parsleys told us to say this, the Parsleys told us to do this. We are never to say that. We are to carry out their orders, but acting as if it's us that are making those decisions in the positions that we're in. And I want parents that have sent your kids there, are thinking of sending your kids to the college. I hope you see this, because please do your research before you make this decision to send your kids there. Now, I have met some wonderful students that have decided to go to the college, and they are very strong in their faith. They've had a very good upbringing, and they have a very strong relationship with God. And so they rely on those things. They rely on their supportive families and their relationship with God and being in their Bibles. They rely on those. But a lot of these kids don't come from homes like this or families like this. They are brand new Christians. They're baby Christians, and they are coming to help their faith be extended. They are coming to grow in their faith and grow in God, and be at a college where they can learn how to be ministers. And many of them, if not all of them, find out that what they thought was true, in fact, is not true. And again, it's just so disheartening, and my heart breaks for these kids and for the staff members, because again, they were in my office frequently, and there's a lot of things that I cannot say and I will not say because their stories are not for me to tell. But there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of exploitation and manipulation of these staff and students that are put in these positions. And, it's all in the name of God, unfortunately. And all I could do was encourage them to find people that they can trust, but also to be in their Bibles and to really cultivate their personal relationship with God, because what's happening there is certainly not godly, and what's being covered up is just it's disgusting. That's really the only way that I can put it. So I wanted to just, like I always do, kind of share a couple of verses that the first is going to talk about pastors being held to a higher standard because of the giftings that God has blessed them with and the positions that they're being put in. So the first verses are 1 Timothy 5:19 through 25. And I'm not going to read them specifically, but basically I want to give you just an overview of what they're talking about. So, pastors, I am going to read them, but also kind of dive in a little bit. So, pastors are, and elders, are held to a higher standard because they're representing Christ, not only to the congregation, but to their staff members and the people that are surrounding them. So, they're to be Christ-like. We should see God, and we should see Christ in the people that are leading us, especially, in church. And when this doesn't happen, it brings on so much hurt, and it's very damaging, and it's hurtful and damaging to the church. But that's only if it gets out. These people, these students and these staff members have been suffering in silence for decades, okay? Decades. And it is, I'm kind of at a loss for words, as you can see, because I don't even know how to describe, how unfortunate and just deplorable some of these working conditions are for people. So back to 1 Timothy 5, 19 through 25. It says, "Do not entertain an accusation against an elder unless it is brought by 2 or 3 witnesses. But those elders who are sinning, you are to reprove before everyone, so that the others may take warning. I charge you in the sight of God and Christ Jesus and the elect angels to keep these instructions without partiality and to do nothing out of favoritism. Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands, and do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses. The sins of some are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them. In the same way, good deeds are obvious, and even those that are not obvious cannot remain hidden forever." So to me, this is saying that if you're called to be a pastor, you're called to be a teacher of the word, that you are held to a higher standard because you are pouring into people and people should see Christ in you. This does not mean you're perfect. We are all sinners. We all make mistakes. But how you treat people matters, okay? And when you look at some of these leaders, okay, maybe not when they're standing in front of you on TV or you go to the church, but when it's behind closed doors, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, I will assure you that in more often times than not, most of us are not seeing Christ-like behavior. And there is very much favoritism. There is very much no accountability for leadership. They are left to do whatever they want while everyone else is either covering up their very sinful behavior, and they are left unchecked. And I believe that is why the behavior has continued to happen, unfortunately. And we continue to see people that come there for the right reasons and they leave and they are broken. They, again, do not want to step foot back there. They don't want a lot of times even to go into another church or get close to leadership in that church or get close even to God because the experience has been so negative. And then the other scripture that I wanted to read is Psalms 126:5. The tears you've cried have watered the soil of your destiny. Prepare to reap a joyful harvest. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. And I just want you to know that I know a lot of your stories, and some of your stories are not for me to tell. They are yours, and I won't tell them. But I will also say that we cannot continue to be silenced. We cannot continue to live in fear of a man and his family and the people that are surrounding him because we are afraid what might happen to us. People are being treated horribly and working in deplorable conditions, and no one has been able to do anything about it. And I want you to know that I don't know all of your stories, but I know a lot of your stories, at least from the time that I was working there. And I pray for you guys. I pray for the students and the staff members that are still there. I'm sorry that you had to go through those things, but I will also say that God will always turn a negative experience into a positive experience if we allow it. And we cannot get so stuck on the negative that we do not see the positive and the joy that can come out of those things. And I believe that you guys that have been through these things, you're going to end up helping a lot of people. And I hope the ones that have found themselves strayed away from God, that you find your way back and really have a personal relationship with Him so that you know that you are safe with Him and that that it matters what He thinks, not what others think of you.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 12 of Mega Maniacs, and this episode is entitled Holy Terror. And in this episode, it's going to be a little bit different than how I usually present, where, I talk about an experience and then I will read my Bible verses at the end. In this episode, I'm actually going to read 2 Timothy 3, the entire chapter for you. And then I'm going to show yet another compelling video of Rod berating and belittling staff, not behind closed doors this time though, but outside in the public for anyone that was around to hear and see. And then after that video, I want to give a little bit more context regarding the video, because not only are there things happening within that video that I think need a little explaining, but I have unfortunately an interesting but sad story to go along with that from a little bit different perspective, and how I ended up finding out about this whole entire situation that ended up happening that you will see on the video. But I think it's needed so you can fully understand not only what you just witnessed in the video, but what staff members encounter on a daily or almost daily basis. So to get started, I'm going to, like I said, read 2 Timothy chapter 3. So it says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, and unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women, laden with sins, led away with divers lusts, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now, as Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds, reprobate concerning the faith. But they shall proceed no further, for their folly shall be manifest unto all men, as theirs also was. But thou hast fully known my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity, patience, persecutions, afflictions, which came unto me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra. What persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yea, and all that will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them, and that from a child thou hast known the holy scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. All scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works." And I always read the King James version, so I know some of you probably read a different version, and maybe the verbiage is a little bit more updated from what I read, but that's my preference on just for myself is the King James version. So we're going to now show the video, okay? And then after that, we'll come back and dissect that a little bit.
Mixtures in the right place for the camera shots.
Yes, sir.
Could we wake up?
Yes, sir.
And you people want to go to Israel and do a shoot? You can't do one on the property. Why am I bringing volunteers out here to do your stuff? My granddad died last Saturday. Don't you lift your voice to me when you go home. You want to go home? Yes or no? Okay. We didn't know about this until this morning. And they only told us to do this part over here. We weren't there. Oh, I know. We've been using one man all week to learn a power line.
So what do we know what entrance that we're talking about to block it off?
Did you get your job?
Is this the entrance you're saying block off?
You don't know nothing.
Is this the entrance? No, I wouldn't leave that one. No, I would leave it alone.
I'm gonna fucking kill somebody. Wait.
So these outbursts that you saw in the video and verbal beatings are very commonplace, to the point that I noticed that, you know, the staff seemed to be completely desensitized to it, and furthermore, like the audio clip from episode 2, no one but the one young man was willing to speak up, say anything. And I'm sure, as you heard on the video, I don't know, you know, if it's normally his personality to speak up and speak his mind in that way, especially to, you know, Rod Parsley. But I think that you heard that, you know, he says in the video that his grandfather just passed away. So I'm sure that he was under additional stress and very sad. And I have another story from a different perspective in regards to that will also give some additional insight as to how this story kind of comes full circle. So in dissecting the video a little bit, the faces of everyone in the video other than Rod himself are blurred, just because, you know, we want to try to keep confidentiality. Whether they still work there or do not work there, we thought that was the correct thing to do. When this all happened, it was in early September of 2021, and, you know, I was still the HR director there, and they were trying to get, you know, a shot that they were going to film for 9/11. And I don't know if they were recreating something that they had done years before, or if it was something new. But that's a little bit of context as to why they were outside, and there were multiple staff members, including those from the media department and those that work directly for the Parsleys. And so they're outside, they're discussing what the shot is going to look like, and then you see that Rod is very unhappy, and then they go off camera, and the young man that you see storming off is telling him that, you know, he had just found out about this project that morning, and that his grandfather had also just passed away. So my experience because I think the video itself, you know, you can draw your own conclusion and kind of see what's going on there. But from my perspective, September 4th was a Saturday in 2021, and that happens to be my oldest son's birthday, and that's why this, not only it stuck out because there's more to the story, which I'm going to tell you, but the date stuck out because, you know, I had planned a birthday party and all of those things. So then the September 6th would then be Labor Day, so we would have been off, you know, for that, and come back to work on Tuesday. So when I came back to work, just for, you know, all intents and purposes, I'm completely unaware of anything that had happened over the weekend. I don't know details about anything at this point. So I'm in the office. I'm, you know, trying to get caught up from being off from the weekend, and then, you know, that Monday for Labor Day. And I received a text from my boss that said that our director of facilities was out, and that was really all of the context that I received, that he was out and had said he wasn't really sure when he was going to be returning, and they wanted me to reach out to him and find out when he was gonna be back. So initially I called and didn't get an answer, and so then I sent him a text and said, you know, hey, I just wanted to reach out to you. I hope you're having a good vacation. And because, again, at this point, this is what I'm thinking. hope you have a good vacation, and just wanted to see when you were planning on being back to work. And shortly after that, he called me, and let's just say he was less than kind on the phone, but then he says, Robin, I'm out of town because my father unexpectedly passed away, and I had to come for the funeral. And at this point, and probably still to this day, there's pretty much a skeleton crew for almost every department there, because it's very hard to not only find people that want to work there, find people that, will agree to all the terms and conditions of actually working there, and then keeping them there. So our facilities department at that point was the director of facilities and basically his sons. Okay, so the gentleman that you see in the video was one of the sons, and I don't know how he got the short end of the stick in this, but they had to decide that somebody was going to stay back and try to keep up with everything at the church, and that so if there was an emergency, that there was someone there. And so this young man that you see in the video, very upset, had to forego going to his own grandfather's funeral so that he could serve the Parsleys and their needs and any emergencies that were going on at their building. So again, I am sure that you can understand his position a little bit more, knowing that he, was in a very terrible, compromising position. But now I am also. So I'm flabbergasted, because I knew nothing about there being a death in their family or anything like that. And so I let, the director of facilities get out what he wanted to say to me. But then I apologized to him and told him that I was completely unaware that that his father had passed away, and I was so sorry, and that I would be praying for him and his family, and that I would have never reached out to him in the manner that I did had I been told and been aware that he was grieving and was going through, this loss of his father that seemed to be unexpected. So from there, I then, after we get off the phone, he said that he would contact me back, or he would reach out to my boss and them directly to discuss, because there had already been a situation prior to us coming back from the holiday, and he was referring to what you saw on the video. But again, at that point, I was not aware of any of those details either. And so then I reached back out to my boss to let her know what I had found out, but also to say, hey, why didn't you tell me that he had a death in his family? I would have never reached out to him in the manner that I did had I known. And she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were aware, and which to me was hogwash. I believe that they probably did want to know when he was coming back, but they were also probably very upset over the encounter that you saw in the video, and not having their full crew there to make sure that they could do whatever they needed to do, even though these poor people had just had this very serious loss in their family. And in regards to that all as well, is that skeleton crew in the facilities department, which again, I'm sure still exists today, they are not only responsible for the 122,000 square foot building that is World Harvest Church Harvest Preparatory School, but they're also responsible for some upkeep and lawn mowing at Rod Parsley's personal residence, also at Ashton Parsley's personal residence. And then there's also a hunting/recreation site in Granville, Ohio, that they also have some responsibilities for. So you're talking, 3-4 people for all of that's not enough even for the 122,000 square foot building, let alone all of these other projects. And so it's a little off topic, but the responsibility that they have, a lot of the things, fall by the wayside because the Parsley's residences and what they need is always first priority. And so if you've got something going on at the church or at the school, it may take a back burner to these other things, which, with a housing allowance, which ministers receive, you should be hiring your own companies and people to come out and take care of your residences, because that's why you can claim some exemption in taxes on your salary, is that you can allocate certain things to a housing allowance, and those things you need to be, paying for, and that's why you can write some of those off, up to whatever you can prove, but they say around 49 or 50%. But I digress. That's, again, I kind of get off on tangents and can go and talking about things that, can certainly be in other episodes. And so, that's really, from my perspective, all that I have for this episode. But I wanted to give you, again, something that's irrefutable, a picture, a video, an audio clip, those are all worth 1,000 words, if not more, because it's not something that I'm saying. It's not something that I'm quoting. This is real life events that not only were happening when I was there, they were happening before I was there, and I'm sure that they continue to happen. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't have anything to report on or talk about if it wasn't happening in the first place. And there does need to be a light shed on these people and these events and the way that people are being treated day in and day out. And they are, so verbally and emotionally abused that most of them just, kind of ignore it because it's so commonplace that it's just like another day at the office, basically. And I am very sad for my friends that did work there with me and would come and tell me what's happening to them. I'm sorry for the people that are still there and have to endure these, verbal beatings on an almost daily basis, or maybe on a daily basis. And I just want the Parsleys themselves and probably the people around them to look in the mirror and take a hard look at themselves and maybe say, you know what, I've been going about this all wrong. I am a human being, but and I make mistakes, and maybe I've been making some mistakes here. So how do I fix that? And I think that not only would go a long way with people, that it would also show that they are human, they are not perfect, and they make mistakes too, and that there's they're really sorry for how they've behaved and how they continue to behave. And maybe the ministry itself would just grow exponentially if that were to happen, and that they would decide that they were going to go in a different direction.
Hello friends, we're offering a special book, Christian Doctrines from an Arminian Perspective. I know a lot of you request me of the question, where can I get a good book on doctrines? Well, I've finished this one, and I cover every doctrine, every major doctrine in Christianity. The doctrine of God, the doctrine of Jesus Christ, the doctrine of the Holy Spirit, the doctrine of the Scriptures, the doctrine of man, the doctrine of salvation, the doctrine of man's free will, the doctrine of perseverance, the doctrine of heaven, the doctrine of hell, the doctrine of sanctification, the doctrine of demons, the doctrine of Satan, the doctrine of evangelism and global missions, the millennial reign. And I have one chapter that I've dedicated to all the false doctrines in the world today, the major ones. So be sure to avail yourself of this special offer. And I'm not charging anything for this. I am accepting any size donation or love offering. And if you can't afford it, then I will get this ebook. It's an ebook. It's not a paperback book. It's an ebook that I will email to you. It's about nearly 300 pages long. And so it's a book on all the fundamental doctrines of Christianity. Make sure and order your copy of this today. Now let's get back into the program.
Hi guys, welcome to episode 13 of Megamaniacs, and this episode is entitled Abuse of Power. And in this episode, I'm going to actually be talking about the events that led up to me resigning my position at World Harvest Church as the HR director, and also the actual resignation, what led up to the resignation, and then show what happened, basically after I gave my resignation and how it was received, perceived, and then discussed to a certain extent in other meetings, almost as a manipulation tactic, in my opinion. But you, again, can judge for yourselves on how that was being handled. So a little backstory, and again, just some information, that has happened since I'm recording this episode. So obviously, a couple of my recordings, the audio and video, did end up getting some attention, and it's being shared exponentially. So I think that, that helps in getting the word out on what is actually happening at World Harvest Church, especially behind closed doors. But as you saw even in last week's episode, Pastor Parsley and is so brazen, and his daughter even as well, so brazen at times that there is a just complete unrecognition of what's happening around, that they can behave how they want, and if people are watching it or listening, it doesn't really matter. And I think that this is shedding light that that's not exactly the case. But I think it also shows that people are so fearful and so intimidated that they are willing to sacrifice themselves at being caught, because they have chosen to record some of these meetings and some of these interactions. And I've done the same, because it's so outlandish that you don't even believe that people would believe you if you said it without proof. And it's such an unfortunate position for people to be in, especially when they believe that they're doing God's work and they're doing what the Lord has called them to do, and then they find themselves in positions where they're so fearful and intimidated that they won't speak up, and that they've now been put in positions where they have to record things that are happening because they just don't believe that anyone is going to listen to them. So this episode is going to just show that even more. I believe that this is where people's minds are regardless of their position within the organization. And that, it then shows a trickle down effect, and people are continuing to be mistreated, and especially mistreated very badly behind closed doors. And, at some point it's got to stop. So is that the people that are in charge actually changing their behavior? Or do people finally say enough is enough? This is not what God intended me to endure while I'm trying to actually do His work. And so I'm going to get started. Like other people, I because I'm in HR, I take a lot of notes. I make sure that I date things and give good note taking so that if I have to reference these things, I can do that. But I also was very, very inclined to do it at World Harvest because I thought that, it could come back at some point where I needed to reference these notes, and I didn't want to try to remember what happened. But also that, I didn't want things to be twisted around even on me, because I knew all of, the particular goings-ons behind the scenes, and I didn't want it to, for myself not to take the appropriate actions that I needed to take, so that, if it did come back on me, that I could reference these notes and have proof that things happened the way that they happened, because, I not only took good notes, but I have other proof of it as well. So leading up to my actual resignation, I had been constantly in prayer about a new opportunity, because, I did need this job. I was a single mom and 2 boys, and I really needed to be able to provide for them. So I unfortunately understood and still understand what some people, where their position is within the organization, because they possibly don't have a lot of opportunities coming their way. And if they do, they're probably quickly shot down as soon as the Parsleys find out about it, because they do have a lot of connections. And I can assure you that they do badmouth people to other ministries, and these other ministries are then reluctant to either even give people an interview, or, they're just not interested in them whatsoever. And I don't know if that's an allegiance to the Parsleys themselves, if they receive, money and gifts to do this. I don't know what that looks like, but I do know that it happens, and I was in a position, unfortunately, like that. So when I actually gave my resignation to World Harvest, I did not have another job, but I felt so strongly, and you're going to see why. So I don't want this to drag on for too long, because there is a lot of moving pieces and parts to this, but want to make sure that I give you a good overview of what this all looked like, this situation. So anyone that works the ministry schedule, which was not me because I did not go to church there, but anyone that worked the ministry schedule, their days off were supposed to be Saturdays and Mondays, because they were at church on Sundays, and then they worked an extra long day on Wednesdays because they were there throughout the day, and then they stayed then into the evening for the evening service. And I came in on a Monday in September, and I was one of really the only people in the office on Mondays, but there were a few people back there in A-Wing along with me. And someone that attends church at World Harvest actually asked if they could come and meet with me. And I was very shocked, because, usually I'm dealing with staff members only. and or people that are actually looking for a job to work there. And so they came and spoke with me, and basically they were also very fearful that it would come out who they are, and I assured them that I would keep their information confidential, and until this day that information has still stayed confidential. And they came to me and said that they were in church and they were very disturbed because they saw my boss hit and pinch one of the other staff members during the church service on Sunday. And as you can imagine, here's notes, pages and pages of notes from these meetings to make sure that I had my information straight, and that I was going to be able to then go and have another conversation. And so I did let this person know that although I was going to keep their information confidential, that I did have to address this, because abusing people, regardless of what avenue that you take, it's wrong in the first place. But then, when you start putting your hands on people and you are, verbally berating and abusing them in front of other people, this, is definitely crossing a line. It should have already crossed the line for me. And I think to a point it did, but I was also, kind of brainwashed and also in a position where I needed to provide for my family. And so I was scared, that's definitely a human and fleshly feeling, but I definitely was scared. And so I was kind of towing the line and just staying in prayer that the Lord would either restore the situation at World Harvest, or he would release me from it. And ultimately he released me. So after having this conversation and getting as many details as I could, the next day was a Tuesday. And so everyone was back in the office, but that's service planning. And so that ultimately, the service planning meetings ultimately take up almost the entire day. And so now we're to Wednesday, and looks like Wednesday, September 28th. And my boss had come down to my office because we had just interviewed some candidates via Zoom. And she came down to my office to discuss it. And even the things that were said during that conversation were pretty crazy, as far as, she said, "Can you tell the recruiter that we need some diversity? All they have sent us is black candidates, and that is going to be a hard sell to the Parsleys." I reminded her that they had sent us 2 Caucasian candidates and 2 Hispanic candidates, and she said, "Oh yeah." And I'm just throwing that in there because, again, I feel like a lot of these conversations kind of leave me with my jaw on the floor, especially now that I go back and read it, because I think there was a part of me that was probably also desensitized like some of the other people. And then when I go back and read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, people are really saying this stuff out loud. So, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase some of this, but I'm going to read as much of the notes that I can, because, this is legitimately how it went down. So I then asked her to come in my office and shut my door, and she was like, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Well, I don't want anyone else, to hear this conversation, and I want to ask you some questions." And so I told her it wasn't very comfortable for me, but that I did have to ask her about it. And so I told her about the church member that came into my office and wanted to speak with me. And then I asked her, "Did you hit and pinch the staff member at church?" And she said, "Well, what do you mean? I didn't punch her in the face. But yes, I was hitting her to hurry up and get stuff up in service." Now, quick, caveat here for this. Everyone that works the Sunday service is under tremendous pressure, whether you see it or you don't see it on stage, or whether you feel it when you're in that tabernacle. Everyone is. So from the people that are on stage singing to the people that are in the media department that are trying to get, the sermon notes up on the screen, to what's being shown on the screen behind Pastor Parsley or whoever is talking. This is a very high stress environment, and to the point where people are so stressed and so worried about they themselves being yelled and screamed at and maybe hit, I don't know, that they're willing to perpetuate this behavior so that they don't actually look bad. Okay. So after she said, I was hitting her to hurry up and get stuff up in service, she says, this happens every Sunday. Why would someone just now be saying something? And she goes on to say, I cannot believe someone hasn't complained about me already and how I talk to people, because that is where I'm really not nice. And I explained to her that it was my duty to ask her and not accuse her, but ask her if she had done these things, and that it was very uncomfortable. Also because, she's my boss, but that I had to. And I went on to say that the disrespect is so prevalent and normal that no one even recognizes how wrong it is anymore. Also, the culture is so fear-based that people are afraid to speak up because they don't want to lose their job or be treated even worse. And she said, okay, I get it. But she also minimized her own actions. And I assured her in the conversation that the person that told me about this happening was not the person that it happened to, but in fact a church member that had seen all of this happen. And I also told my boss that I was worried about her, because even though she said that it happened every Sunday, I did feel like it was out of character for her and signified to me that she was stressed and overwhelmed and possibly also being treated very badly. And she just kind of left my office, I think shocked and a little flabbergasted, but it was, it seemed to be a genuine response, but also a response like, what's going to happen, with this if people find out. But again, it seemed to be kind of commonplace. So I was very unsatisfied with the discussion. I did end up meeting with the staff member that it happened to. She, admitted that this in fact happened, and it was not the first time, and that she wanted to make sure that they knew that she was not the one reporting this, and she was very fearful that something was going to happen to her. She did not want me to say anything, and I explained to her that I had to say something. So after all of this happening, I was still very unsatisfied with this, and just trying to stay in prayer, because it not only affected me just on the human side, but it also affected me because it was very triggering for me of things that I had experienced, and it just made my heart hurt for the people that I knew were enduring a lot of these things and felt powerless and felt like they couldn't say anything. And so I continued to pray, but I just knew that my time there was over, and I just felt it in my spirit. And so on October 5th, and we'll show a copy of this, but I'm going to read it as verbatim as I can. On October 5th of 2022, I did submit my resignation, and usually when people resign from World Harvest Church, and probably from any, very abusive and toxic workplace, they are as nice as they can be in the resignation letter because they want, them to give them a good reference, and they don't want to leave on bad terms, and they just don't want to put their issues actually in writing in black and white. And that wasn't the approach that I took, because at this point, again, I was so upset with what had transpired, especially because the person that had been hit and hit and pinched in this service was not only a colleague and someone that I cared about deeply from that level, but she was also my friend outside of work, and I think her and her family are wonderful, and so I just was having a lot of issue with this. And so I did put in writing, and again, we'll show a copy of that with a few things blacked out just to protect myself and protect them to a certain extent. But if you work there, you know who all of our bosses are. So in my resignation letter, I say, it is with my deepest regret that I must resign from my role as the HR director of World Harvest Church, Harvest Preparatory School, and Valor Christian College. It was brought to my attention on September 27th, 2022, that you, my boss, physically corrected a staff member in a church service. I questioned you about it the very next day, where you not only admitted to it, but minimized the interaction and said it happened every Sunday. Furthermore, you said that you could not believe that someone hasn't complained about your verbal interactions because that is where you can be extremely mean. I am not only upset and disappointed, but I am hurting personally and feel convicted to stand up for what is right, regardless of the fact that it is literally my job to do so. I cannot, in good conscience, continue to recruit people to work here and that may or may not be subjected to verbal and physical abuse. Please accept this as my 4-week notice. My last day will be Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022, unless you choose to release me early. I will do my absolute best to find and trade my replacement and tie up any loose ends. Well, the 4 weeks didn't last. I actually ended up leaving in I ended up leaving in October. Sorry, I was confused on the date for a second. And did end up leaving in October, and they didn't want me to completely work out my notice. Did not find my replacement or train my replacement. And in fact, I think they went a period of time without an HR director because this was almost 2 years ago at this point. So then after, I submitted this, we are also going to show you a text message that I received from my boss. Now, to give you a little context between the issue happening and me actually resigning, I had been in a car accident and had not gone to the hospital right away because I didn't really think anything was wrong with me, but subsequently ended up going on this date, October 5th, and found out that I did have a concussion. But after this meeting, I received a text message, and again, we're going to show it with a couple, maybe a couple of things blacked out. She says, I apologize that you're in this situation and state of turmoil because of my actions. I really hope that you will choose to stay and allow us to work through the challenges that you brought to me today. And I also want to make sure you know I only asked you to leave my office because I was sobbing and I couldn't control myself to not break down any longer. I hope you got out of the office and find some rest. If you need anything with getting to urgent care or need dinner, please let me know. And, very, very kind message. And because, she can be kind, and so can a lot of other people. They can also be kind. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, they seem to be more concerned about protecting their reputation and protecting how people view them rather than how they actually treat people. Because again, just on the humanistic side of this, we are not supposed to be hurting people, whether it's verbally or physically or mentally, emotionally, financially, sexually, any of those things. We're not supposed to be abusing people, especially, behind closed doors, because we don't think anybody is going to find out about it. But again, to be so brazen that you do this thing, you treat people this way in public for everyone to see, I think that also says something about how long you've been doing it, the fact that you have no accountability, and that you have gone unchecked for so long that you think that you can do whatever and say whatever, and that it's not going to be exposed or challenged, or that people are not going to be upset with how you're behaving. And, there's plenty of Bible verses on exposing false teachers and exposing people that are in these positions of power, and they take advantage of people and they literally abuse their power, and then they go out and pretend that they're something that they're not. So I ended up leaving the office that day. Again, went to urgent care. I got a concussion. I'm out of the office. The doctor said for 5 days, because the screens were really exacerbating the issues I was having with the concussion that I didn't know that I had. But one of the most troubling parts of all of this, and obviously the fact that staff members are physically being corrected, that's an issue all in itself, and definitely the biggest issue here. But one of the other main issues that came up, and again, we're going to show this because this is directly from a Friday service planning recap meeting. So Tuesdays, they have the service planning meetings that kind of go all day long. And then on Fridays, they have like a recap meeting, and that's where they go over, everything that had been discussed on Tuesday. How are things going for service on Sunday? What needs to be planned? Those sorts of things. And there's always someone in this meeting, whether they're physically there or they're on speakerphone, and because there is not to be any recording, which obviously there are still people recording because they're so fearful that people are not going to believe them, that these things are actually happening. But someone is there to not only take notes during the meeting, but then transcribe them, and then these notes then go out to all of the members of the meeting. And you'll see that there's only, initials being used, and they're not writing out the full names, but the ones that I'm sure that will jump out to you initially is RP, obviously Rod Parsley, ABP, Ashton Parsley, and then, the other people are people that sit in those meetings day in and day out, but not necessarily in front of the camera. So before I get to the actual excerpt that is speaking about HR and the events that happened after I gave my resignation. So put my resignation in writing on 10/5/2022. This meeting is 10/7/2022. So one of the first things that you'll see is Rod Parsley is saying, one of the most frustrating things to do is for people to act like they are more intelligent than me, because I promise you that's not the case. And if you've seen episode 2 and episode 12, it just continues the fact that people are being berated and belittled and embarrassed in meetings, whether they're outside or inside, it's happening. People are recording it because they don't believe that anyone is going to believe them. But there are also, I would call them intimidation tactics, bullying tactics, if you will, that are happening when it's not necessarily being recorded. And so what he then says is, I don't care if you put on MMA gloves and go at it. My job is not to fix it all. I'm sitting here. I can't get a flag sign replaced in less than 3 weeks. Everyone wants to run to HR, and it's such an environment around here. I'll go ahead and add, HR is not the place for you to gossip. If you have something to say, be person enough to go to them. Okay, well, what happens when people go to you, Rod Parsley? Okay, they get abused and yelled at and screamed at and berated and belittled even before coming to you, but how do they even get a meeting with you? Okay, you know, Rod Parsley and Ashton Parsley are kind of untouchable, especially within the church. You know, they're using aliases so people don't know that they're commenting on things. People are asking for meetings, they can't get them, you know, because, you know, maybe they're so busy, I don't know. But it looks like more of, you know, continuing to critique everyone and, you know, walk around and make sure everybody has their, you know, nose to the grindstone and working, and that, you know, time is spent on picking these things apart rather than actually dealing with the issues. And so in me resigning from my position, and again, I was there almost 4 years, I had several increases, and as you already heard, at least my boss did not want me to leave. Now, was that because she was worried about the Parsleys hearing about what actually happened and involved her? Or was it, you know, they already knew and they liked having me there because, you know, I smoothed a lot of the things over, especially with the staff members, even though I feel like I was always very honest. I tried to be loving and kind to them always, and they were always struggling on whether God really wanted them to stay there or not and continue to endure the things that they were enduring. But now, you know, people are coming and gossiping at HR, for goodness sakes, which, by the way, was not happening. People were coming to me because they trusted me. They knew that if I said it was going to stay confidential, that it would. And if it couldn't stay confidential, as you already heard, I was very honest about that and said, you know, I will try to keep as many details as possible confidential, but I still do have to say something. And I was not going to risk my professional reputation for people that did not even value human beings, let alone fellow Christians and fellow colleagues, that to have enough respect for them and love for them. And just on a human side, not even, you know, bringing in how the Bible talks about we're supposed to treat and love people, but just from a humanistic side, you know, how can we treat people like this, and what kind of power trip are these people on that they feel like it's okay to treat people in this way, and then berate them even further and saying, you know, stop going to HR to gossip. You know, that's not what was happening. And, you know, I don't know what people are doing now, but I can certainly tell you that that was not the case. So I did, you know, end up leaving, and my time was cut a little bit short there, and it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. As soon as I left and was out of there, I did receive another job offer, and my life just, you know, became exponentially happier and more full of joy, even though I still was reeling on the inside for my friends that continue to work there and still continue to work there. But I knew that I had a lot of healing to do, and it took me probably about 8 months from leaving there to realize everything that I had endured and everything that people were enduring. And like I said, you know, before, I tried to just put this all behind me. I tried to be, you know, not be the one that was exposing World Harvest Church and what was actually happening there. And, you know, I couldn't run away from God. I could not run away from what I knew to be true and knew to be right. And that was ultimately, you know, what started the podcast and continues the podcast. And I'm going to read a couple of Bible verses like I always do, but I will also just, you know, throw in that the person that, you know, was actually the focal point of this story, as far as the person that was punched or, you know, hit and pinched in service, she did end up staying long after I left, and I don't believe that she works there anymore. I don't have as much contact with her as I used to, but I don't believe that she works there anymore. And so what a blessing for her. But there are still plenty of people that work there that have to endure everything that you've seen in these episodes and now, you know, are hearing about in this. And so before I read the Bible verses, I kind of feel, you know, in my spirit that as far as this, you know, season of episodes, when it comes to my experiences there, that those are probably coming to an end very soon. I don't know, you know, how many more episodes there are, but I can kind of feel like, you know, that's kind of coming to an end. But I also want to say that I believe that I'm going to start having guests on the podcast, and I would love to hear from you and hear if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast. And if you are, please send me a message, reach out to me via email or on social media, or some of you have my text or my phone number, so you can text me. Please reach out to me and let me know if you would like to be on the podcast and why, of course. And because I believe that's going to be the next season of episodes, is actually sitting down and talking with people and what their experiences were there and how they've overcome those, or maybe how they're still struggling with those, because I know that's definitely a thing. So please reach out. Please continue to you know, follow the podcast and subscribe and like and all of those things, because it really is making a difference whether you see it or not. I believe that it's making a difference, and I know that it's helping a lot of people. So my first Bible verse and that I'm going to read, and it's a couple of verses, and then I'll read the second one as well. So the first Bible verse I'm going to read is Acts 20, and it's 28 through 30. And it says, "Keep watch over yourselves and all the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherds of the church of God, which he bought with his own blood. I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. Even from your own number, men will arise and distort the truth in order to draw away disciples after them." And, you know, I try really hard, again, to always have as much grace and understanding that I can. But, you know, if after everything that we've seen and we've heard and what the Bible even says about these things, you know, if the Acts, you know, 20, 28 through 30, if that's not talking about, you know, these church leaders that have a very privileged position of even being called a pastor and being able to have a flock that they actually lead, and they are so, you know, they live in so much disdain and have so much pride and so much ego that they care more about themselves and the amount of money that they make rather than making sure that they are shepherding people correctly and loving people correctly and making sure that people are hearing the gospel and that they are actually being saved, to me, it just jumps off the page. We don't, the Bible has plenty of scriptures that talk about false teachers and exposing false teachers and what fruits of the Spirit look like. Look at those, and then look at the people that you're allowing to lead you and direct you and lord over you in some of these cases. And is that really what we're supposed to be doing? And you have to call that into question for your own self. But I know for me, it did, like I said, take a little bit of time for me to really grasp and understand everything that I had endured while working at World Harvest, and also what other people endured, and that we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to stand up for other people. And there's a way of doing it that is not disgraceful. Like, I know some people think that it's disgraceful to speak out against churches and church leaders. But at the end of the day, if they are teaching falsely and they are false prophets, somebody's got to say something. And that was always what my intent was that they knew that I knew it was not okay for them to be behaving this way. And although I still continue to pray for them, I want them to really recognize the error of their ways and that they have hurt a lot of people and they continue to hurt a lot of people. And the last verse that I have is Matthew 7:15-20. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And I know that in one of the other episodes, I do use that scripture, but I think that it's very prevalent to continue to point out, again, what the scriptures say about the wolves that walk among us, the wolves that pretend and they look like sheep and they pretend to be sheep on the outside, but when you actually start looking inwardly and looking at the fruit and even getting a glimpse into what they are actually like behind closed doors, that this is signifying to us that we need to open our eyes and we need to open our ears, and that it is wrong for us to continue to pretend that these things do not exist. And I know that they probably exist a lot more places, unfortunately, in churches than just World Harvest Church. But this was my experience, and it taught me a lot. It made me a better person, but it also left a lot of scars and bruises on me. And I know that it did for a lot of other people as well. And that at the end of the day, it was my duty to stand up for what's right and stand up for the people. So thank you so much again for subscribing, liking, following the podcast. And again, please reach out to me and send me your messages if you are interested for season 2 of Megamaniacs and being a guest on the podcast. Have a good evening.
All right, guys, that will conclude today's program. Avoid Rod Parsley. He's a false teacher. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's an angel of light full of the devil. Thank you for being with me on today's program.